Good morning. My name is Israel Rizwan, and this is my individual assignment on Aristotelian Virtue Ethics and its application to a real life moral issue. Our goal here is to analyze workplace conflict through the lens of character, specifically through Aristotle's Golden Mean. The issue took place late one night around 12 o'clock in the very busy emergency department of Hospital Kuala Lumpur in the mid 1980s, where my father worked as the registrar. Now, the emergency department operated on a strict code of practice. So we have to treat those emergency cases first before we treat cold cases or non emergency cases. Now, this protocol was based on the medical need and was essential to ensure the fairness of the system. Now, the strife began when two individuals arriving in an MPV and looking quite affluent walked into that public hospital. After being told to register and waiting only about 15 minutes, one of them, we'll call the Dato, demanded immediate treatment. After looking at his registration and judging that the Dato was a cold case, the registrar told him that staff were very busy tending the emergency cases first and that the Dato would have to wait to receive treatment as per the hospital's mandate. Now, this angered the Dato, who threatened staff to have their jobs taken as he was very wealthy and influential. Now, this sets up the core conflict of standardized medical ethics versus demand for personal privilege. The incident involved two individuals, the registrar, who was bound to the emergency department's code, and the Dato, a wealthy individual who came in with a non emergency case. Now, the Dato was impatient, demanding immediate treatment, attempting to threaten his way to bypass standard protocols even. The moral act here was done by the registrar to uphold the protocol, refusing to compromise medical ethics despite the social and professional pressure he knew he might face. From an Aristotelian perspective, the registrar's action reflects the cultivation of the virtue justice. So, justice is the comprehensive moral virtue concerned with giving people what they are due. Matter of fact, let's look down to the registrar first. The registrar's behavior demonstrated justice by treating all patients equally based on their medical need, not their social status. By prioritizing emergency cases, he ensured that those lives were at risk received their due care. This upheld the fairness of the established rules, reflecting an excellent state of character. In contrast, let's look at the Dato's behavior now. That demonstrates the vice of impatience. Now, this vice reveals a failure of character rooted in excessive self focus and entitlement. Impatience is the vice access to patience. The Dato displayed excessive anger and frustration when his desires for privileged treatment were not met. His unwillingness to respect the medical system's protocol shows the lack of corresponding virtue, which is patience. This brings us to the core of Aristotelian ethics, the golden mean. Virtue for Aristotle is a state of character. It's an average that lies between two vices, an excess and a deficiency. So to be virtuous is to hit the mean, acting rightly at the right times for the right end and in the right way. So let's focus on the registrar using the graph for justice. Now, justice is the mean between the two vices, injustice and favoritism. When we hear the story of from the registrar, we can tell that he also avoided the vice of excess, which is favoritism, which is the act of excessively privileging one person beyond what is due. Now, the Dato was demanding favoritism, and the registrar's refusal was his act of hitting the mean, justice, by ensuring the right distribution of medical resources according to need and not status. We can plot the Dato's character on the graph for patience. So we can clearly see that the Dato sits firmly on the side of excess as impatience. A truly virtuous person would use reason to accept the protocol of the emergency department. They would recognize that the purpose of the hospital is to save lives, and therefore it is just and it is good that true emergency cases receive priority. It would then feel natural for a truly virtuous person to act with patience, respecting the system. The Dato's path to developing the virtue of patience starts with habit. Since he is prone to the extreme of excess, he must engage in correction habituation, which is initially aiming for the opposite extreme of deficiency, in his case would be apathy, to drag himself back to the middle of the mean. So this includes tangible steps like deliberate waiting in public and practicing delayed gratification for minor desires. Through repeated conscious practice, a new virtuous habit where waiting and respecting order will become his new natural response. This habit must also be guided by moral reflection. The Dato must use his reason to pause and reflect on the higher purpose of the situation. This clarity, guided by reason, is essential to making his actions truly virtuous and moving him towards a state of flourishing.